On this special edition show of WVU News, Beyond the Beltway, Appalachia and Trump's first 100 days, we take a deep dive into how decisions being made at the federal level are impacting people right here in Central Appalachia.
Government agencies across the country are being cut in an effort to reduce the federal budget.
We look at how these layoffs are impacting the economy of rural communities.
And while the Republican majority says they won't cut benefits to seniors, many residents are worried that they won't keep their promise.
And later in the show, the Trump administration is now making it easier to log or drill on nationally protected lands.
Experts say it could have a positive impact on the prices you pay at the pump. Well, what does that mean for tourism in the state? We'll find out.
These stories and more coming up on our special edition of WVU News.
Your trip to the grocery store may become more expensive. I'm Addis Neely, and straight ahead on WVU News, I'll tell you how Trump's tariffs may impact your next grocery bill.
I'm Jackie Gunther, and coming up on WVU News, I'll tell you about how DEI initiatives removed from federal agencies that fund science are affecting students here at West Virginia University.
I'm James Daly, and I'll tell you about how recent tariffs are impacting the local economy right here in Morgantown. Our Emmy-award winning WVU News starts now.
Welcome to WVU News. I'm Patrick Walsh.
And I'm Jackie Gunther. In this special edition show, we're exploring how the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's administration is affecting local communities.
We start with how Trump's tariff proposals are impacting local jobs.
Our business and economics reporter James Daly joins us in the studio with the story. James?
Thanks, Jackie. Patrick, President Trump has paused most of his international tariffs for another 90 days. But in north central West Virginia, the threat is still having an impact. Tariffs are essentially taxes on foreign goods imported into the U.S., but that cost is usually passed on to the consumer, sending prices up. The Trump administration says they're implementing tariffs to boost manufacturing inside the U.S., but so far it's led to layoffs in dozens of companies, even some right here in West Virginia, where officials say they'll take a toll on local businesses and the taxes that fund critical services. Last month, two major employers in north central West Virginia announced layoffs: the Novelis aluminum plant in Fairmont and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in Morgantown. State lawmakers say federal changes are part of the reason.
So in 2 days, they announced 400 jobs were being lost in north central West Virginia. And that's all based on federal policies, Trump tariffs, DOGE cuts, and things that are going to really affect the state of West Virginia.
For local officials like Tom Bloom, the federal cuts are causing a chain reaction in the local economy.
And the concern is it's this instability, and people don't like that because they don't want to invest. And that's the biggest problem that's happening in Montague County.
Bloom says in 2024, Mon County's tax income dropped by more than $2.5 million from business closures. New layoffs due to federal cuts and tariffs this year, Bloom says, will lead to fewer businesses operating in the county, and in turn, less income to provide for critical services like law enforcement and senior centers.
What business is going to come downtown and take the risk factor if they don't know their supply chain?
Layoffs also mean fewer customers for these local businesses, and tariffs mean the customers who are left will pay higher prices. According to a study done by Yale University, these tariffs could cost the average American household nearly $3,800 a year. That's almost 5% of the median household income. President Trump says his tariffs will help boost production in the U.S. and create more high-paying manufacturing jobs. Dr. Shuichiro Nishikawa specializes in international trade and economic development at WVU and says it's not that simple.
It's goods we imported from China and Vietnam, for example. They are very labor-intensive goods, and it's really hard to produce these goods inside of the United States.
For Bloom, it's the uncertainty that is making his job harder.
And that's the biggest problem. We don't know.
12 businesses closed in Morgantown in January, and Bloom worries more are coming.
While President Trump has set a baseline of 10% tariffs for most countries, Chinese tariffs of more than 100% took effect on April 9th. Experts say businesses who import goods from China will likely have to increase their prices to cover that cost, while they figure out if they can produce the same products in the U.S.
Thanks, James. In 2023, the U.S. Census Bureau says West Virginians spent 16% of their income on their groceries, Jackie.
That's 4% higher than the national average, Patrick. The state ranked last in per capita income in 2024, which means inflation on things like groceries is taking an even bigger toll here.
Reporter Madison Eli looked into how federal policies are impacting the prices you pay in the checkout line.
Tony Roush says he spends about $160 a week to feed his family of 4. And with grocery prices on the rise, he's already making adjustments to save money.
Things have already been going up the whole time, so I've kind of countered for that, maybe buying a little bit less of something instead of buying like a 24-pack of something, maybe buy a smaller amount. So kind of making those adjustments as we go along.
Economists say these price increases are partially due to the Trump administration's tariffs. Tariffs are taxes imposed on foreign goods that are ultimately paid by consumers through price increases. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the price of eggs rose 5.9% last month. Americans are paying an average of $6.23 per dozen despite a decrease in wholesale prices. But it's not just eggs. A Yale University study says consumers can expect to see the price of food increase by nearly 3% in the coming months.
They'll drive up inflation. I mean, depending on how high the tariffs ultimately are and how broad they ultimately are, because all this is in flux for at least 90 more days.
Roush says price increases will affect not only his family, but he's more concerned about his neighbors.
Eventually there has to be a ceiling to where people will, not be able to pay for it. I mean, we're fortunate and, we have what we need, but obviously it affects people that are less fortunate more so than myself so far.
Prices on produce and other fresh foods are expected to increase first, making healthy eating more expensive. Madison Eli, WVU News, Morgantown.
With potential cuts to federal programs like Medicaid or Medicare, some West Virginia residents are concerned they will no longer be able to afford their health care.
Reporter Connor White joins us live in the studio to tell us more. Connor?
Thanks, Patrick. Jackie. More than 65 million Americans over the age of 65 rely on Medicare to pay for their medical services. But in West Virginia, more than 75% of nursing home residents rely on another federal program, Medicaid, to pay their assisted living costs, including nursing homes. While Republicans in the White House and in Congress say that these programs are safe, West Virginians who rely on federal health care are worried they'll be next on the list of federal cuts. Sundale Rehabilitation and Long-Term Care is a 100-bed facility in Morgantown, and 70% of its residents are supported through Medicare. Despite the White House stating cuts will not be made to the program, many residents are concerned that the federal health insurance could be in danger.
It just keeps you awake at night worrying about what you're going to do next when you run out of money.
Donna Tennant, the admission and marketing director at Sundale, says that she is concerned about how these potential cuts could affect the quality of care Sundale offers.
It is really tough, and I worry that it will get tougher as time goes by with all of the cuts that we're anticipating.
Medicare started in 1965 when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Social Security amendments. They aimed to expand coverage to an underinsured senior population. Over 330,000 West Virginians are on Medicare. That's about 10,000 people per block. If Medicare is cut, that would affect over 19% of West Virginia's population. If cuts are made, people in the state who are 65 and older will be affected disproportionately.
It does give you a little anxiety and a little stress, but you know what? We're not going to worry about that till it gets here.
Medicare not only covers senior citizens, but also people with certain medical conditions.
President Trump has said he will not cut Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security programs for seniors. But a GOP budget resolution approved this month in the House of Representatives would cut Medicaid by $880 million over the next decade.
Thanks, Connor. On his first day in office, President Trump signed an executive order to end diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that are federally funded. And that's having an impact on research at institutions of higher education. At least 90 public universities have had grants ended due to the use of DEI language. At WVU, $12 million in research funding from the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation has been cut for new and existing research. The grants fund cancer and vascular-related studies. Some university professors say the cuts could set back research in the state for years to come.
The defunding of this, whether it's like NIOSH here in town or it's our graduate students, our health sciences campus, it's like in 4 years it's going to be gone, right? And so like I don't know if you can start over at that point.
The research cuts are part of a plan to reduce federal spending by some $4 billion.
Across the country, organizers have held protests to speak out against those federal cuts, including one right here in Morgantown. Hundreds of people attended a hands-off protest downtown earlier this month. It's part of a national movement, but was organized locally by Mountaineers Indivisible. The Mon County-based group formed in January in an effort to bring local residents together to show their displeasure with federal budget cuts, layoffs, and increasing tariffs.
There are people that have always said, you know, well, I let it up to someone else, and it's affecting them now. And more people, I think, as this goes on, will realize that it is affecting everybody.
West Virginia has seen similar protests in Huntington and Charleston this year.
Federal museums that include minority history are also being reviewed for potential cuts. Activists are worried these changes will impact history centers.
Mercedes Dykes visited 2 West Virginia museums that celebrate Black history and culture and brings us this story.
The Scotts Run Museum in Osage, West Virginia, documents the history of coal mining in this Mon County community. Al Anderson is on the museum's board and says 19 ethnic groups are represented in the story the museum tells.
When everybody go in that mine, they're all making the same amount of money. So when you come out of there, and then in those pictures, you know, when they come out, everybody is dust black. See, they didn't have wash houses back in those days. So when you come out the mines, you know, everybody's exactly the same.
The Osage Museum is one of about 20 landmarks of Black history in West Virginia. The Scotts Run Museum preserves history from one of America's most diverse coal mining eras, such as the clothes you see behind me that were used in strike-related picket lines. But President Trump's executive order would end funding for the National Institute of Museum and Library Services. Last year, the NIMLS awarded $6 million to museums and historical places across the country, a majority of which focus on African American history and culture.
This is a bad situation for many people. This is white and black, but it's probably one of the worst times that we're ever going to have in our lifetimes.
The Kimball War Memorial, located in Kimball, West Virginia, is the only site in West Virginia dedicated to honoring Black World War I veterans. Dr. Joel Beeson founded the museum and says without these sites, much of our national history will be lost.
And that's why this is so upsetting and outrageous and, you know, angers me and all of that, because those stories are important, and the truth is important for all of us.
Trump's order also removed funding from the National Endowment for the Arts, another funding source for art and history centers like Scotts Run. Mercedes Dykes, WVU News, Osage.
Coming up, one executive order may lead to more jobs in West Virginia.
And lower prices at the pump. These stories and more after the break. Don't go anywhere.
How often do you look at the weather app before reaching for your keys? I'm Patrick Walsh, and after the break on WVU News, I'll tell you about cuts to an agency that could impact future forecasting.
Fake news doesn't just spread. It's engineered to fool you. Straight ahead on WVU News, I'm Claudia DeLima, and I'll take you behind the screen to show you how it's done.
Quiet and ready in control room. 3, 2, 1. Fade in bumper.
WVU News is local, in-depth, and always on the move for you. And it's always on YouTube, on the web, and on the Reed College of Media website. A national first-place Emmy-award winning college newscast, taped at the Waterfront Studio at West Virginia University. Stay in the know, stay connected, watch WVU News.
Welcome back to this special edition of WVU News, Beyond the Beltway, Appalachia and Trump's first 100 days. I'm Jackie Gunther.
And I'm Patrick Walsh. The U.S. is the world's leading producer of oil and gas. And the Trump administration is making efforts to expand production even further in response to rising energy prices.
Patrick, these efforts include plans to loosen environmental regulations and an executive order to fast-track fossil fuel projects in nationally protected lands.
Energy and environment reporter Reagan Deussman joins us from Studio B at the Media Innovation Center to tell us more. Reagan?
Thanks, Jackie. Patrick. President Trump signed an executive order this month allowing more than 280 million acres managed by the U.S. Forest Service to be logged. The Department of Interior is also reviewing ways federal lands could be used for energy production, including mining and drilling. As one of the top 10 oil and gas producing states in the country, economists say the changes could be good for West Virginia, but environmentalists are worried about the cost.
Hannah Phillips is a Pittsburgh resident who hikes multiple times a week.
I find it really grounding, and it just helps me feel more present.
But a new executive order from the Trump administration could impact parks like this one. It removes protections from national lands and could allow for mining, drilling, and logging. For energy states like West Virginia, WVU professor Dr. Ibrahim Fati says the change could be a good thing.
I think it's going to have a very positive impact both on the oil and gas industry, specifically in West Virginia, and also the whole economy of the state.
In 2023, West Virginia's oil and natural gas industry generated more than $660 million.
The average American spends more than $2,000 per year at gas stations like this one.
But Fati says more production in the U.S. could lead to a decrease in prices at the pump. However, these orders have been a cause for concern for people who rely on the parks for relaxation and recreation.
You want to kind of just look out and see the vastness and just see the natural elements, and I don't know, if there's fracking and drilling going on, I feel like you can't really fully be in the present moment.
Some park officials say the changes could also lead to a decrease in visitors.
A study by the National Recreation and Park Association found more than 50% of Appalachian park users are concerned about the future of regional parks due to natural gas fracking. Patrick, back to you at the Waterfront Studio.
Thanks, Reagan. While the energy industry expands, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration expects budget cuts of more than $1.5 billion amid President Trump's efforts to shrink federal spending. I took a closer look at what this could mean for accurate forecasting, especially during times of severe weather.
In mid-April, hail pounded southern West Virginia. Tays Valley resident Aaron Kidd was out to dinner when the storm hit.
So as I'm sitting there, the roof, it sounded like somebody was throwing rocks on the roof. And I thought, oh my gosh, is that hail?
Kidd says he heard storms were coming, but knows he can rely on alerts from the National Weather Service for information about severe storms. The local meteorologists say the future of those warnings is uncertain. In March, President Trump's administration cut more than 1,000 jobs with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the parent of the National Weather Service, and implemented hiring freezes. In the United States, 55 National Weather Service offices have a 20% vacancy rate, putting a strain on meteorologists in studios like these to do their job properly. WVOY Chief Meteorologist Justin Kiefer says he relies on the NWS to do his job, warning the community about what's coming their way.
I relied on the Weather Service for the critical information in regard to severe weather, and then I took that and ran with it with what I knew and then could use that in a broadcast.
The layoffs have forced some NWS meteorologists to work 12-hour shifts. WRIC Chief Meteorologist Matt DiNardo in Richmond, Virginia, has been in the industry for 30 years and says that can be dangerous for the public.
And when you start working on 9th hour, 10th hour, 11th hour of staring at radar time and time again, you know, some things might slip. You might get slower. You're tired. Your eyes aren't focusing as well.
More than 500 Americans each year are killed in severe weather events. And DiNardo says they hope reductions at the National Weather Service don't lead to more.
More likely going to translate it.
Whether you see posts in support of or opposing President Trump's decisions online could come down to your algorithm. Social media algorithms are carefully personalized based on user preferences and past interactions. The goal is to keep you scrolling. But algorithms are also known to spread posts that elicit strong emotional reactions and often misinformation. Senior correspondent Claudia DeLima explains.
Reagan Rowland is a WVU student and one of 54% of Americans that get their news from social media. But one thing she's noticed, more and more misinformation shows up on her feed. She told me about a time she came across a story of a student's drug overdose online that ended up being completely false.
It just wasn't true. It never happened. No one died. There was no ambulances. None of it was true. And a whole bunch of people freaked out for nothing.
The convenience of digital news can be unmatched, but there's a lot more that goes on behind our screens. Algorithms are what create a user's social media feed and rely on engagement to hold your attention. They monitor your clicks, likes, and even what you scroll past. Also, it can keep recommending you content. And sometimes they recommend you extreme political ideologies. Here's how it happens. You're scrolling on social media and a post catches your attention. You spend 7 seconds on it, which is all it takes for the algorithm to recommend you similar content, even if it's false. Then you might decide to share it, which then pushes that misinformation onto other people's feeds. This topic was so widespread that it was a main talking point at the 2024 presidential debate, especially after fact-checking was no longer implemented, which caused misinformation to spread even more rapidly online. Algorithms want to keep your eyes on the screen, and experts say that's where the danger lies.
So misinformation could be something that is not true that gets them angry and kind of that rage bait, or it could be something that actually confirms their biases that then they want to read about more.
Many people say they don't bother to fact check what they see online, which is crucial when it comes to curbing the spread of misinformation.
I know that I get a lot of fake articles, news, or just posts on my social media, and I don't fact check them. I just believe them, and I really need to start fact checking them.
Companies like Instagram are rolling out teen accounts that help filter misinformation and harmful content and add extra safety features for users. Claudia DeLima, WVU News, Morgantown.
After the break, we'll look at how changes to Title IX could impact female athletes at universities across the country.
Stay with us.
After the break on WVU News, I'm Terrell Thompson, and I'll tell you about a new ruling that is setting back gender equity laws and preventing female college athletes from putting money in their pockets.
Quiet and ready in control room. 3, 2, 1. Fade in bumper.
WVU News is local, in-depth, and always on the move for you. And it's always on YouTube, on the web, and on the Reed College of Media website. a national first place Emmy-award winning college newscast taped at the Waterfront Studio at West Virginia University. Stay in the know, stay connected, watch WVU News.
Welcome back. Between WVU and Marshall University, West Virginia has a total of 15 Division I female sports teams, ranging from basketball to rifle.
But funding for those teams could now majorly change, thanks to new Trump administration guidance on Title IX.
Sports reporter Terrell Thompson joins us now with more on those changes. Terrell?
Thanks, Patrick. Jackie. The guidance from the U.S. Department of Education came earlier this year. But universities are still trying to figure out how that impacts revenue sharing, or the schools that will not be required to pay student athletes. Title IX is a federal law that was put in place in 1972 to prohibit sex-based discrimination in university athletics. Under the Biden administration last year, the U.S. Department of Education said these rules applied to profits universities made from sporting events and apparel. But the Trump administration is revoking that guidance, which could leave female athletes across the country short millions of dollars.
Morgan Burton is a former WVU swimmer who says paying for college as a student athlete can be difficult.
Some of us, we don't get scholarships. Some of us are walk-ons. We still have to pay rent. We still have to pay for our books. We still have to pay for school. And so people not being able to do that, even though they do want to continue to play the sport at a D1 level, it gets difficult.
Burton is one of hundreds of WVU athletes who were eligible for payments under an October 2024 preliminary legal settlement with the NCAA. That settlement requires schools to pay student athletes who played from 2016 through today a portion of the revenue they made off things like ticket sales, TV deals, and apparel, a total of around $20.5 million per school.
It leaves all athletic departments to their own wits and their own policies regarding, okay, we're going to start revenue sharing.
How they distributed that money was up to each university. In 2024, the Biden administration told schools that they had to split the revenue proportionally between male and female teams. But now the U.S. Department of Education, under President Donald Trump, says Title IX rules don't apply to revenue sharing.
Many college athletic departments plan to send most of the money they generate to football and men's basketball players, while women's sports would see less than 5% of that share.
Under Title IX, the agreement would have also required universities to provide male and female teams equal publicity, down to the number of social media posts about each team. Without those guarantees, Burton worries about the future of women's sports.
They do teach us a lot about Title IX and how far we've come from a sports standpoint, and I don't think NIL shows that.
The new provisions are expected to take effect this summer without the requirement of following Title IX rules.
Last year, women's sports, including Division I leagues, surpassed $1 billion in total revenue for the first time.
Thanks, Terrell. Well, that's going to do it for this special edition of WVU News. I'm Patrick Walsh.
And I'm Jackie Gunther. Thanks for watching.